And as we turned left on the, not a hard left, just a dog leg left, there sat this object on top of November 5 that was about 10 feet in the air, directly on top of that blast door that was the size of a Walmart building. It was huge, and it was a sphere.
I sat down with Mario Woods, a former U.S. Air Force security responder. In 1977, he was stationed at Ellsworth Air Force Base in South Dakota. Then, age 23, he experienced an incident that would change him forever, literally leaving him with missing time, marks on his body, and a colleague locked in catatonic shock for hours.
Literally could not get a breath of air. It was just all-encompassing.
So here it is, my full interview with Mario Woods.
So who are you?
Oh, my name is Mario Woods. I currently live in Southeast Georgia. I'm 69 years old. I served in the Air Force from 1975 to 1983. And in 1977, had quite the experience on November 5 missile site, which was a Minuteman II 1.2 megaton weapon in the ground, in a hardened structure, in a silo, just north of a small town named Newell, South Dakota, which is 30 miles north of Sturgis, which most people have heard before. And this is a high plains area, buffalo running terrain. Seen them a few times also. But 1 o'clock in the morning changed my life. That week of November, we say 18th, in 1977.
And you were stationed at Ellsworth Air Force
Ellsworth
Base.
Air Force Base, that's correct.
And what was your role there? What were you doing?
Security police, assigned to the missile squadron. You have about 800 security police officers that work the site, and about 1/3 are assigned to aircraft back at the main support base of Ellsworth, the actual Air Force Base. All the missile sites themselves are manned by 6-man teams, and there are 150 Minuteman II missiles with 15 launch control facilities is where you live, and you act as a response team while on duty on a 12-hour shift. To respond to any and all given alarms or launch facility checks or anything that an ordinary police type duty would be.
Not for our sake, but for the context of the audience. Do you have any mental health history prior to your sighting in 1977, your experience in 1977?
No, I do not. I was part of the personal reliability program also for sensitive nuclear equipment.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, anyone that works around any type of nuclear devices, weaponry, or construction of, or the storage of nuclear components, whatever it may be, plutonium, uranium, or anything that's used in the in that particular field, you have to be cleared and granted a clearance in order to do it. If they detect anything that's abnormal with how you may react, up to and including taking life, if you have to, and in preservation of keeping that ours, or saving someone's life, I mean, they really analyze you deeply to see if you can't do that.
And you have to report if you're taking any sort of medication.
Oh, they know. Yes.
Any sort of
yes
diagnoses in the past dealing with mental health.
Correct. They do random blood tests, urinalysis, everything. We didn't have gum swabs back then, or the tests were quite different back in that day. But that was really there was no leniency in that.
Okay, so you're in Ellsworth Air Force Base. It's 1977. You have a partner that you're working with?
Yeah,
Is
his
that right?
name, Michael Johnson. He's a real light-skinned black guy. He told me he was from Chicago, Illinois, and we only worked together that one day. He was working vacation relief for my partner, whose name was Steve Welchel, who went to North Carolina to get married. So he had 30 days in which to do that. So in the interim, while we went on a tour into the field, and mind you, your main base is Ellsworth, and you report there. Our SATAF, our operations facility, is at Ellsworth, and all the 3 squadrons meet there for this huge guard mount. As we depart from there on buses or helicopters if the weather's too bad and they can't travel on the road. And we go out to our respective launch control facilities where we live for 3 days at a time and come in the morning of the 4th day.
So set the scene for the night in question. What are you doing?
Really nothing. We had gotten out there probably about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. Usually if you're working the night shift, which we were assigned to, which was 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., we try to lay down and take a nap. But, that young and strong and vibrant, I didn't really see the need to do that. So during the day, I just stayed up and did some other things, played some ping pong or something. And that night we went on duty at 6 p.m. Of course, we go in and we get all of our code tables issued to us and all that stuff. Or when we're dispatched, it can be either or. And I guess it was about 9 o'clock, 9:15 or so. And I smoked cigarettes then, so I just thought I'd walk outside and have a cigarette. And it was between 9 and 13 degrees outside. So I had my long johns on over my fatigues. And I just walked outside and, you're talking prairie land as far as you can see north and east and west. And you don't see south because the building's behind you. And I see this light off to my east at about a 30-degree angle. And it looks like a mini moon. I honestly thought it was the landing lights or some type of landing lights for B-52 bombers because the main base supported uploaded aircraft of B-52s. And they often flew sorties or test runs across the prairies at night, usually at around 300 feet. So it was like a low-level flight, right? It was pretty cool to see that. That's what I thought it was. And I thought they were coming to me. That's why I couldn't really gauge the distance. I mean, I thought 5 to 7 miles, and I'll stick with that at about 30 degrees, but it never changed. And I kept looking at it. Now, if I extended my hand this way, it covered the circumference of the light I was looking at.
So how far away was the object? I
would guess 5 to 7 miles. And the reason I say that is at the end of this, I can make that correlation. Cause you got to have things that, that put all this together. And, it was just so strange. It was as if there was a light right out there a few miles away from you, and it doesn't belong there, but it's not coming near you, and it's not going in either direction anywhere else, and there's no noise associated with it. It just sits there. So that's where I was with that, and I'm smoking this cigarette, and I thought, well, what? I thought, what the hell is that? It can't be. Is that B-52s or is it helicopters? We did have helicopters back then, but I never saw them fly at night like that. And so again, I just thought it was 2 B-52 bombers together, so close, one behind and a wingman like that I just took it as that. But I held my hand up like this, and it covered the light, the circumference of the light. But if I did my fist like this, then it was larger than my fist was. And I thought, that is really strange. How can that be? When I sailed with my father, growing up, I went to sea with him a couple of times during the summertime. He could do that. You can't do that today, but back then, a chief engineer could do that. Mm-hmm. I went inside the facility, went into the flight security controller office, which was just right to the right as you open the front door. And Bill Holloman, he was a staff sergeant. He was talking to his wife back at Ellsworth, and the toggle switch or the rocker switch was on the wall just behind him, right next to the entrance to the elevator door where the officers used to go down the elevator to the capsule. And I said, hey, Bill, there's something out here strange in the air. I said, some lights. I said, do you mind if I flip the lights at this thing? And he just looked up at me literally, and he had that big old gray phone back to his head. And he just kind of waved me off, like, go ahead, do what you want. So I just honestly, no SOS or nothing. I just flipped it off and on, off and on, off and on 3 times. And, I ran back outside. I was probably 25 feet away from the door and just a little bit to the east of the door, of the front of the door. And just watching it, a couple of minutes went by, maybe a minute and a half. And all of a sudden, this thing goes out, on, out, and on. And it just sent shivers up me. And I went, wow, well, they do see me. So I literally thought okay. Because I've had them do wing waves at me before, like fighter aircraft or helicopters. They'll do a little swing like that if they see you on the ground. And as security policemen, you're taught that. You are taught hand signals and flashlight signals, for aircraft if you need to be rescued or you're trying to aid them getting to the ground or what have you. You are trained on that. So I just thought it was really cool. And I thought, all right, well, let's carry this on a little bit further, because still it was in the same location, not coming closer, no sound. So as I went in, I said, hey, Michael. Didn't know Michael from Adam's House Cat. It's our first time we ever worked together, and he was just simply sent out to work this vacation relief for my partner. So I went and I said, hey, man, there's something in the air you need to come and look at. And now he worked missiles also, but on a different flight. He was usually at a different location. He didn't work in November. And he outranked me by 2 months, by the way. So he would be driving the vehicle and I would be the passenger or the team member. So he kind of looks at me for a minute and really is not too excited. I said, come on out here, man. You got to see this. Hoping it would still be there when I went outside. So he comes outside. I said, hold on right there. We walked about 20, 25 feet. And I said, look at that. You see that? He goes, yeah. And I said, I just flashed the lights at that thing and it flashed back at me. And he just looked at me as in disbelief. So I said, stay right here. And I ran in there real fast. And I said, hey, Bill, you got to come see this thing. Because he and we went back a ways and we knew each other pretty well. And I don't know what kind of discussion he was in with his wife, but he chose not to come out and stayed on that damn phone. So I flipped the lights again, same sequence, blip, 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 3 of them, 3 times. Ran back outside, about 2 minutes pass, and it goes out, comes on, goes out, comes on, and stayed on twice. 3 and 2, that's right. And so he just kind of looked at me and looked back at that. And I said, what do you think, man? He goes, man, I don't know. And I said, I'm going to do it again. Maybe I said, do you hear anything? Couldn't hear nothing. He didn't hear anything. He didn't seem to be too impressed. I must say that. It didn't seem to really get a hold of him the way it did me. I was excited about it. Still not knowing what it was. I said, it's gotta be B-52s. No reply. So I ran back in again. I did the same thing. He stayed right there. Flipped it off, flipped it on, flipped it off, flipped it on. Ran back outside. I know Bill Holloman thought I was a nut by that time. So I get back out there and it flipped off and it did not come back on. But when it did come on, it was about 30 seconds or so. It had moved just a little bit north, but it had moved further westward, like from that position to this position, which made it look, say from the 3:00 position where I was visualizing it, seeing it, maybe to the 1:30 position, something like that. And it came on and it just stayed right there. Never heard anything. Never saw any type of flame or anything like an afterburner or nothing. It didn't move. It just was right there. And he goes, hey, man, he just said, I don't know. And I said, what do you think it could be? Whatever. And he walked back inside. So the last time I went in there and flipped the lights at the thing, came back out, and that would be the 4th time. And it was out and I didn't see it again. It was, when I came back out, it was gone or it was out. So I just shook my head. I just took it as, well, I guess they went that way. Maybe flying up toward or over toward Belle Fourche, which is about 30 miles away, north and west of our location. More north of that's North Dakota, so, I mean, we were in that proximity in that high northwestern area there. And so I just went back inside, and I guess all this time from like 9:15 to about 9:40 when all this transpired, maybe 9:35. It's hard to be exact, but I try to be. And I went in and started playing some cards, watching TV or something, or he didn't want to do anything. As I said, we literally didn't know each other, and we spoke very little. And other than the fact that I knew, the area in November, that site and all the missile sites where they were located, which are 10 of them, he was just there to fill in. So we watched TV until midnight, and that signal comes on. It used to look like a radiological signal. It used to come on at 12 o'clock when all the 3 stations that we have would go off the air, and then it would have that loud noise, that signal
static.
sound. Yeah. So that happened. So you just turned the TV off. Nation was a different place then, believe me. Was in a different place then. And I guess it was about 12:15 when, as I was sitting down, I think I was looking at a book or something, I hear the alert phone in the flight security controller's office go off. And that's the phone that's directly connected to the launch control people downstairs, 2 officers downstairs. And it sounds like, and it rings until you pick it up. You got to snatch it off the wall. And of course, Bill Holloman did that. And I hear him saying, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Sit for November 5, which is a 2-pronged alarm. It's an above ground and a below ground sensor that has been affected. And as I said, the temperature was between 9 and 13 degrees that night. So it was cold. So I had on my long johns, fatigue pants and shirt, and I had on bunny boots because I knew I was going to be doing some walking because you have to do a certain type of route around the facility on foot, inside and outside the fence line, which is a good walk. And in snow, it gets kind of a little dicey because it just does. But anyway, so we got all of our equipment. We had our weapons. We had our code tables. We had our ditty bags, which is what you carry all your stuff in. And the F-150 Ford pickup truck was sitting directly outside our front door. We keep it plugged in because it gets so cold there that it will freeze up the coolant in your engine, or they also have a way of keeping the transmission warm with a plug-in. So unplugged that. We were set to go. The vehicle's warming up, and we got our safety briefing and everything that we needed, and off we went. And I'd say that was probably right around 12:20, 12:25, and it was a 15-minute, travel time to November 5. And strangely enough, that was the closest launch facility to our launch control facility where we lived. It was the closest one. As the crow flies, it was only maybe 5.5 miles away, but the way that you had to get there made it probably 10 miles or 8.5, 10 miles, somewhere in there. So as we left, we go through the gate out to the end of, these are all clay roads. You can go from one end of the state on the other on a clay road, and they're maintained by the state. They're very nice. Got to the intersection, hung a left. There's no traffic. Believe me, there's no traffic. And next intersection, turn left, and it's 4.5 miles from that intersection up to Highway 79, which runs down to Newell. So you're going uphill as you go down in this little depression area. You're going uphill toward the highway bed as they build them high so snow and ice runs off of them. And I just happened to look to about my 4 o'clock position, straight that way where November 5 was located. And when I did, I see this pulsation, like an orange, yellow, and white type glow coming off the ground from miles away. Should have never seen that before. And I said, hey, Michael, I said, check this out, man. I said, you see that glow over there? I said, look how, I said, can you see that? He didn't say anything yet. And as we got up to Highway 79 and we turned right, then we're on top of that plateau. And now that 4 o'clock has become like a 1:30 again. And I said, look at that, man. I'm telling you, that's that object. And why I said that, I don't know. He just said, whatever, man. And he said that to me a couple times that night. Whatever, man. So as we traversed down Highway 79 toward Newell to a stop sign, there's one stop sign and one stoplight in Newell. And the population then was 230 people in that town. And it was on the entrance and the exit on Highway 79. Every time I entered Newell, population was 230. When I left, it was 230. So now it's 600 and something. As I was there in 21. But as we went downhill, I lost sight of that pulsating glow. We went down to the stop sign. We took a right, and the road goes out about 1.5 miles, and then it doglegs back to the left. And as we turned left on the, not a hard left, just a dogleg left, there sat this object on top of November 5 that was about 10 feet in the air, directly on top of that blast door that was the size of a Walmart building. This thing was as big as this building you're in right here. It was huge. And it was a sphere. It had an energy source that moved around it like like you'd see pictures of the sun, how it's just like boiling. I don't want to call it plasma, but I don't know what really to call it. But there were no tail sections, no portholes. There were no thrusters. There was no leading edges of any kind, no wings, tail sections, nothing that we would associate anything in the air with. It was a complete sphere, but on a magnitude that is just hard to even comprehend.
As you know, I'm always on the hunt for things that help me stay sharp, focused, and full of energy while I'm diving into life's mysteries and making this show happen. And I've got to say, mud water has completely transformed my mornings. Back in the day, I used to struggle with that post-coffee crash. And let's not even get into the caffeine jitters. Mud water gave me the smooth, steady energy I was missing. It's packed with functional mushrooms like lion's mane, chaga, and reishi, plus turmeric and cacao, all working together to keep me focused, calm, and grounded. Honestly, it's like coffee went on a yoga retreat and came back zen. What I love most is that it's not just about replacing coffee, it's a whole new ritual. It's a simple, nourishing way to start the day, and I actually look forward to it every morning. Every ingredient is USDA certified organic, vegan, non-GMO, and there's zero sugar. It's energy that doesn't mess with your sleep or make you question your life choices at 3 a.m. Ready to make the switch to cleaner energy? Head to mudwater.com, that's MUDWTR.com, and grab your starter kit today. Right now, our listeners get an exclusive deal up to 43% off your entire order, plus free shipping and a free rechargeable frother when you use code Jesse. That's right, up to 43% off with code Jesse at MUDWTR.com. After your purchase, they'll ask you how you found them. Please show your support and let them know we sent you. Keep your energy natural and refreshing all year long with Mudwater, because life's too short for anything less than clean, delicious energy.
So we pulled up to this thing about 60 feet on the access road to the site itself. You had these, I think the fence was either 10 or 12 foot fence with big opening gates on it. And we pulled up at a 45-degree angle right where the cattle crossing is located, because all these ranchers own this property, and the property was leased from them to put these missile sites on back in the day when they built them. So the cattle can't come out into the main road. It still happens, but it really decreases that from occurring. So we pulled up right at that cattle gate, and immediately upon doing so, it was as if a light came down that just about blew my eyeballs out of my head. You could literally almost see the veins behind your eyelids. It was as if, I don't know what kind of energy that was, but whatever was released or put down our way just completely almost disabled you just from the brightness. It was like living in a welder's light for a few moments. And then the atmosphere just vacated. Couldn't breathe. Literally could not get a breath of air. Now, I don't know if that was from my excitement. I don't know if it's from adrenaline. I'm 23 years old. I was in excellent shape. I could flat foot 25 miles in full combat dress and smoke a cigarette at the end of it. It didn't bother me a bit. Literally, I was in that kind of shape.
Wow. And
I was just so taken. Michael Johnson, I never remember him looking up at the thing. But for me, I was at a 45-degree angle, and I'm looking directly out his window, and part of the back window, this is an F-150 Ford pickup truck, a 1975 or 76, I can't remember which, but the square body type pickup truck with Western mirrors on the sides of them, 2-wheel drive vehicles. And the only thing I knew to do was to ask for relief. And where did that come from? I have no idea where that thought or impulse came from.
You pray to God or Jesus or just relief generically?
I think he was in there, and I just asked for relief from what I was experiencing to breathe, because I didn't think I was going to be able to take another breath of air. And I grabbed my flashlight, which I've gotten ridiculed before. It was an aluminum black 3D cell flashlight. I think it was made in Japan. I'm not sure. But it was a great tool, and they just started making them. Now, Maglite didn't come out until 79. I had this in 77. It was given to me as a gift. And I rolled the window down, and I reached up with my right hand and I grabbed onto that mirror, pulled myself up on that windowsill because I was so afraid to step out of the cab of that truck. Now, I'm fully armed. Why would I be afraid? I've never been afraid to do anything. I mean, especially in my duty, I was so afraid of what I was experiencing. I didn't know how to deal with it. I pulled myself up on the windowsill of that truck out of that seat. And, I grabbed my flashlight and I had a glove on my left hand and I had my flashlight in my right hand and I had my hand on the blue bubble up on top with the glove. And I just flashed that flashlight at this thing like I did at the facility, I guess. I don't really know. And as soon as I did, it felt that I got relief. It felt like there was relief. And I just slid back down in the seat. And as I slid back down in the seat, I noticed dust particles and stuff and a way in which that cab was lit up that's hard to describe. It seemed like everything was in slow motion. Like the dust that was in that cab circulating, from the vent work was like it was in slow motion moving. I was like looking at it. It was like sparkles or something, or like glitter. It was like that. And I thought, what's happening here? What is this? And I was trying to breathe. I was trying to talk to Michael. Got no answer from him as he was just stuck or glued to that steering wheel, and he was just bathed in a blue-white light. You know, the light intensity never honestly went away. It was just all encompassing. It was just all surrounding to a point where you're like trapped in light. There's nowhere to go. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it. I don't know. I just felt like somebody had me right where they wanted me for some reason. These thoughts and all this that I just described went by in just a couple of seconds, not minutes, but just a couple of seconds. All this just happened so fast, faster than what I've just told you. And then this black ball, about 6 times the size of a beach ball, looked as if it had vents or something on it. Not round vents, but these long like lines coming down the side of it. It didn't touch our truck, but it shot right down in front over the hood of this F-150. And I don't even know what to say, but it was so fast and so whatever it was doing quick that it just bounced around from every location on the truck, front, back, left, right, in front, and then it was just gone. I still don't know how much time has passed. Then I became afraid, and I made sure I rolled my window up. I put my M16, when I came back, got it back in it, when I slid back into the truck, I put my M16 between my legs, and I was holding onto the barrel. I don't know where my flashlight went. I just knew to secure my weapon between my legs, and I held onto the barrel. And this permeating smell, I have no idea where it came from because, as I said, my window was up, and I know his window was up. So it had to come through the ventilation ductwork, I guess. But it permeated the vehicle stench smell. Bad ammonia, like you want to roll the windows down. You want to step outside and get some fresh air. I mean, some of the cleanest air on the planet runs through South Dakota year round. But this was like standing in a bottom of a boat or something, where they catch shrimp, I guess, and dump them there. But put them there. I shouldn't even say that. But anyway, it was overwhelming. And when I smell that, I just got a real strange feeling from within, like something when you're afraid or when you're scared or something, because I knew that wasn't normal. And I know I'd never smelled that before. I only associated it with what I'd smelled in the past, trying to make maybe a visualization in my mind what it could be. And the light never stopped. The pressure did. We could breathe again, or I could breathe again. Michael Johnson, he never said anything from the time we rolled up to that site, anything, the last thing he said to me was on the top of Highway 79 when whatever, man, as it was glowing over in the far distance, that I saw this pulsation off the ground, or what I took as off the ground from where we were from driving there. And so when that happened, I felt as if I was becoming, I don't know, sleepy or tunnel visioned or something. I kept shaking my head as I relive it. As we're sitting here right now, I kept I felt as if I was going to go out. So I was trying to hold my breath and squeeze, like pilots do that, in G suits to keep the blood in their head, right? But I felt as if I was going to pass out. And I started getting this tunnel vision effect in a way where I couldn't see, and it was just getting smaller and smaller, and it was black on the exterior of that visual that I was looking out the front window. I mean, all these thoughts are running around in your brain, and this is all taking place in just a couple of minutes, not 10 minutes, not even 5 minutes, from what I understand. And as I'm blacking out, I know I feel something on my right side. And I turn my head and I see these 4, I'm going to call them beings. And they are not walking as you and I walk. They are just gliding across the ground. Maybe, I don't know how high off the ground. I couldn't really see that. But they have these little uniforms on. And the one on the far right, he had some type of a small wand in his waist belt. I've got a drawing of it that had a yellow tip on it, some type of a yellow tip. And it really got my attention. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. But the one behind those 3, the front 3 were the same size, exactly the same size, looked exactly the same. But the one behind them was a chest and a head taller than the little guys. And he had this thing on his chest right here that pulsated the same color as what was on that little wand. And when I saw him, then I was afraid. Then I felt fear. Maybe just visualized fear. I don't know. They didn't do anything to me that caused fear other than where I was and what I'd just gone through. And then I went black. I just went, that's the last thing that I saw in my mind. And just a second went by, and literally when I came to, my weapon was between my legs and I'm still holding on to it. And I just looked straight up like that and right out the windshield of that 150 in its total blackness. And I thought, where'd all the light go? Literally, I didn't even know where I was. We were. I said, Michael, where are we? Where's November 5? Because it's lit up. It has lights on it. They're like pole lights. It has those type of lights on it at night. This is a standalone facility. So even if external power is cut, this thing takes over and has a generator run itself, right? No answer from Michael. And I kept yelling at him, Michael, what's going on with you, man? And I pushed him in his shoulder really hard. I put my finger in his ear after a couple of minutes. I shoved him, checked his pulse. He was breathing. I couldn't get anything out of him. He was as if he was in some type of a state that I didn't even really know to have the words for. As if his eyes were open and he was breathing and his heart was pumping, but he was just stuck on that steering wheel. And I tried, I don't know how many times to get him to say something. I said, snap out of it, man. What's going on? What's wrong? I got frustrated with that and I just popped the door open, little lever on the side. I popped the door open and I stepped out trying to get in my mind, where'd November 5 go? Because that's where we were. I mean, and this was a very serious alarm. So that reason had to be found out why that thing alarmed, how it did, in that alarm configuration. And when I stepped down, I stepped in mud with those bunny boots on, and I went, what the hell? How is this? And then to my right, where your chair is located, maybe a foot further, there was a wall there at about a 45-degree angle, and it was white, and it went up about I don't know, as far as I could see, like 50 feet, but my eyes got more accustomed to the darkness. And then when I looked in both directions, not knowing exactly where I was on the compass, it was as far as I could see that direction, as far as I could see that direction, and up about 50 feet when I become acclimated to the darkness. Had no idea where this was. I said, Michael, come on, man. You got to wake up, dude. We're in a bad way here. We got to find out what the hell's going on here, Nothing. I even tried pulling his hand off that steering wheel, and he was just, I don't know how a person can stay that tense and for so long that they don't cramp up. I would cramp up doing that, but he did. The next thing that I knew was I hear WSC to November 1. That's us. WSC November 1, what's your location? And I said, are you going to get that? Thinking that would snap him out of that, hearing that radio signal, a radio call for us. He didn't answer. And I picked it up and I said, Senior Airman Woods, WSC. I said, I don't know where we are. And he goes, do you need medical help or do you need assistance? And I said, I don't know, sir. I said, I'm fine, but my partner won't respond to me. I said, he's awake, breathing, and well, but he won't let go of the steering wheel, and he's just sitting in the driver's seat just like he is stuck.
He's just like in the frozen catatonic state.
That's the word that I had never heard when it was told to me, catatonic state, and that's correct. He was. So when I finally got out of the vehicle again and walked and looked, and I'm thinking, where did all this mud come from with this temperature? Because everything else is frozen. As I said, that wall was at about 50 feet high and at this strange angle, like 45 degrees. Well, it was the backside of the Newell Lake Reservoir Dam. And that is about, on the map, about 8.5 miles away from November 5. Now, we only had two-wheel drive vehicles, and where we were positioned behind that dam was in the very center of that dam wall, at the most center point. And at the far end was the sluice gate where they control the water flow and allow it to go out if the reservoir gets too full. And in front of us was the rest of the dam, and that road ran north and south. Wing Security Control told me to maintain 1 minute security checks because they were trying to triangulate our location. Now, I had never done that in tech school, but I'd heard of it. I may have read something about it, but I'd never done it or been part of that training. So I didn't know how it was done. So I did what they asked, and I probably made 20, 25 checks before they got to us. And as I was doing that, I noticed it was getting light to the east, and that was the sun coming up. And then it dawned on me, well, man, we got this alarm last night at 12:15, and I looked at my watch, and it was after 6 a.m. So we have all that missing time, and I can't explain any of it, because for me, it was just what I saw, what we experienced, what I smelled, lights out. Next thing I know, we're sitting behind the Newell Lake Reservoir Dam.
Miles away.
Sergeant Garza, there were three alert teams looking for us. So that's 6 security policemen from 3 different sites. Whether they used the primary or the backup alert teams, I'm not really sure. And in 2021, discovered that not only were they searching for us, but Wing Security Control or base control or whoever they were asked for a federal or state assistance. So they sent out 2 deputy officers from Sturgis and 1 state trooper. That area was his area. And I've got a guy that's named Steve that's working on, as he is a state trooper today, who that deputy was or who that state trooper was that was on duty at that time. And 2 of the 3 are passed, but 1 last name Kellogg is still alive. And I'm trying to make contact with him.
Did Michael Johnson ever make it out of his catatonic state, your partner?
No, not while we were there. When Sergeant Garza pulled up, he pulled up within, say, 60 feet. I guess he didn't want to get into the snow area that we were in. He pulled up, and I walked around the back of the truck, walked out toward him, and I said, "Hey, Sergeant Garza, how's it going?" I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Mario, I can't talk to you about this." He said, "I'm just here to escort you back to November Control." And I said, "Okay, but I need help with Michael Johnson." And he looked at me kind of strange. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I can't get him off the steering wheel, and he won't talk. He won't say anything." Well, I've never dealt with anything like that, or anybody else has that I know of, where somebody's, locked up, frozen in some type of state of or catatonic state, hanging on to something. Usually you can, I literally couldn't believe how hard it was to get that man's hands off that steering wheel. I couldn't believe it. So we unbelted him and did that. And we slid him across the driver's seat and into the passenger side, belted him back in. He just sat there with his hands down, looking forward. And I kept talking to him, thinking at some point he would just fall free, or whatever he was experiencing. But again, this was a 2-wheel drive vehicle. And walking around that vehicle, as I just described, on the left side or driver's side of that vehicle, about 4.5 foot away from that door, was a big drop off. It's there today. And that is the holding pond for anything that comes out of that dam. And it's pretty dadgum deep. So had we gone in there, driven in there, this is a what if now, had we driven in there, that road's only 5 feet wide. There's no way that this 2-wheel drive F-150 Ford with road tires on it, not even any big mud tires or anything, they didn't even have those back then, would be able to turn around. We were just in the only position we could be in to drive out of that dadgum place. And I drove out of it, and I never went over any tracks, and it hadn't snowed anymore or nothing had changed since we were there. When I left out of there, it was the only set of tracks coming out of where we were. One set of tracks. But had he opened that door and stepped out of that vehicle, or I had, you'd have gone right down. Now, it probably just slid down in mud, but it was down pretty deep. And it was just amazing to me how we were in the right position to exit there. That's important to me. Trying to explain it to myself, how this took place. So followed them back to the launch control facility to November 1. They escorted us all the way there. And then 2 of the 3 teams dropped off. And I guess Garza or one of the teams remained. I guess they had to have, when we were going to be removed from the site and taken back to the main base of Ellsworth, which is about 55 miles away. And I didn't know that at the time. They had to have our replacements immediately there, that you can't be understaffed on any kind of launch control facility. It has to be fully staffed at all times. So when we pulled up at the site, my flight chief was there, Master Sergeant Hawkins, or Master Sergeant Joel Gray. Assistant flight chief was Tech Sergeant Hawkins. The facility manager, he was a tech sergeant. Yeah, the 2 officers that were on duty, they were off duty now, and they were above ground. They had been relieved. Their replacements were underground. Bill Holloman, the site cook, and of course you had one of the security response team that remained, him and his partner. So they took me in the day room, and when they came out to meet us, the gate slides open. I pulled in right in front of the flight security controller's office, and they just descended upon the vehicle. Well, we got our bags out and all that stuff, and they went to the passenger side, and I said, "I don't know what's wrong with Michael." I said, "I can't get him to speak." And I said, "We had a heck of a time getting him off this steering wheel." Nobody said anything at that point. They took him, put his arms over their shoulders, and they took him to the back room, I think in the facility manager's quarters. I don't know what they did, but that's where they took him. They took me into the day room, or I walked into the day room, and mind you, I'd been up the entire day before, 5 o'clock in the morning till we had guard mount, traveled, to get out there, then stayed up all day, went all night long until this happened. And, so now it's probably somewhere around, I'm going to say 7:15, 7:30 in the morning. And we had just departed Newell Lake Reservoir Dam, and I'd never been there before. I never knew that place was even there. Mm-hmm. And it's a little north of November Control, and it's sitting back off the road about 4.5 miles. Mm-hmm. So it sits way back up on the prairie, and I honestly had never been there before, nor knew about it. And so they started banging me with questions, and what did you see? What did you do? You know, how did you do this? You communicated this. You didn't report this. You know, what was wrong with the site? Just all these things were coming at me, and I was answering every single one of them. And believe me, there was a bunch of questions. You just don't go missing on a nuclear missile site for 5 hours and not answer questions.
Yep.
It's a big deal.
Did you get the sense when they were asking you questions that they had seen things like this before, or like it was this completely novel thing where it's like, what the hell happened here? We have no idea. Like, we have no idea how to we have no pattern recognition for this.
Well, there were rumors years before I got there that something happened down toward the Badlands in the 66th area, and where 2 security policemen were found out of their vehicle. The vehicle was, some distance away from them. Their weapons were distanced from them in an open prairie. And one was found completely with no clothes on. The other was just about like 90% unclothed. And I don't know what happened to that, but there were always talks and rumors about things in the air or things on the back of the runway at Ellsworth, B-52s uploaded bombers that are ready to go, uploaded on the alert pad. And, what did they use? F-86s at one point or a couple of times to chase these objects away. And I think there's several reports of that. One of the guys that I know who's an F-16 pilot, Chris Leto, we were talking about that one time. But anyway, they questioned me up one side and down the other. And I remember telling Master Sergeant Gray, I said, I can draw some things if you'd like me to. And that the question never really got, I don't know if it didn't get to him or answered to, or what happened, but they just kept asking questions. And I got to the point where it was just, everything was just at one time coming from every space in my mind, questions about the whole deal. And I said, I got to go to the restroom just to get away from it for 10 seconds. I just wanted a little bit of peace just for a few seconds. So trying to cope with what I had just seen, lived through, and experienced is nothing I ever had before. And I went to the restroom and I opened up the stall door, which is still there today. I went right back to it in 21, and I just went and sat on the toilet and closed the door. And, it was a regular stall door. The door's about that high up off the floor, blue. And these facilities were extremely nice. I mean, they were very well maintained and extremely nice. And I was just sitting there on that toilet thinking about what I had seen and what had transpired. The thought hit me, I didn't even strike the site. And that's the procedure that you do when you arrive at the facility. That's required for you. You have these steps that you have to follow to eliminate whatever threat there is there, but to assess the entire situation and report that back. We never reported anything back like that, and we didn't, I don't even think we used the radio from moments of arrival. I really don't. I can't remember if we did. And all of a sudden, Jesse, I get this ringing in my ears. That was as if somebody struck a Liberty Bell right next to my head. I mean, really, I have to emphasize that because it was like, it got my attention. I don't know if I reached up and put my hands on my ears or what, but when it happened, everything turned like lime green to me, like pea green. And I didn't, it was as if my vision was changing or some part of my visual acuity was changing. And I closed my eyes, and when I did, I had this feeling I was leaving my body. Literally, I thought I was dying. I said, I guess this is how you die. And every time I closed my eyes, I felt as if I went, without going anywhere, I felt as if I kept going lower within myself. And I knew that there was a clear channel to exit me through my feet.
Mm.
I knew there was. It was a map. There was something there that I could leave if I so chose to do so.
Mm.
And it scared me to death. It's literally scared me to death, man. And when I opened my eyes that last time, I saw 4 fuzzy feet walking by the bottom of that door with a set of Cochrane military boots. Behind him, that was a dog handler and his drug dog. So, they had gotten them to come out 55 miles out from base to go through all of our stuff, make sure there's no drugs involved. And I said, I'm glad to see you, because he didn't know what I just experienced. And I said, my ditty bag is out there in the day room. He says, it's all right, Mario. We already have it. I don't know who he was, but he knew my name. I don't know if he had just been told my name or what, I played a lot of tennis back then. He may have been somebody I played with, but, I said, I'll be out in just a minute, man. He goes, yeah, no worries, man. He says, you're all good. Just come and check on you. That's what he said. Just came in to check on you. I said, thank you. So they left, or were leaving, and I opened up the stall door and I just went to the sink. And mind you, I still have on my long johns and my fatigue pants and shirt and, same clothes I was in about 30 hours now. And I just turned that faucet on. It's ice cold water. And I just literally just drowned myself with water. I was just soaking wet because Master Sergeant Gray said something to me as I came out there. He said, what'd you do, climb in the sink or something like that? And I did. I don't even know if I answered. I just said, yes, sir. So I think I had a towel in my hand. And he said, well, he goes, get your stuff. He goes, we have to go back to the SATAP building. That was our main operations building on Ellsworth. And I said, yes, sir. So I grabbed my stuff and immediately I said, well, what about Michael Johnson? He said, don't worry about him. He'll be going with Sergeant Hawkins. I said, okay. And I really wanted to talk to him, but immediately upon arrival at that site, we were separated right then and there. Now, I don't know what good it would have done because he wasn't coherent or wasn't answering or anything anyway.
So he hadn't said a word.
Nothing. Not one word that I knew of. Not one word. He hadn't said anything to me or to anybody else that was there. And I don't know how they transported him, other than him telling me that Master Sergeant or Tech Sergeant Hawkins was going to take him to the base, right? So I got my ditty bag and loaded up and, got my weapon, everything, and off we went to Ellsworth. And it was about an hour, 10-minute ride back to Ellsworth. We went in through the back gate at Box Elder and went straight to the SATAP building. And he escorted me the entire way. Armory turned in my weapon, all that stuff. And, which was normal procedure, went to Ralph E. Spraker's office under escort. And of course, when you are called in like that, you do a formal report in where you literally knock on the door frame or whatever. Even if the door's open, you knock on the door frame. And then your commander or whomever tell you can enter the room. You enter the room, go directly to his desk, heels together at attention, report in, Senior Airman was reporting as ordered, sir, And he told me at ease, but he didn't tell me I could sit down. I'll never forget that. I just thought it was strange, and he had to know how long I'd been up. I mean, I was weakened, if I may say. I just felt really weakened in a different state, not knowing what I experienced. I was still wet from an hour and 15 minutes ago from the sink, so it was really strange. And he asked me some questions, and he said, I remember him saying, sounds as if you've had an interesting evening or night or something like that. And I said, yes, sir. And I looked to my left, and there's a total of 5 people in that room. There's the deputy base commander, who I don't remember his name, but next to him was a man in a gray tweed suit with a hat, and the hat was under his arm. Then there was a Captain Jack Reed, OSI. Next to him was this new OSI guy named Rick Doty.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and do you have any speculation as to who the guy in the gray tweed suit was?
I was never introduced to him nor told his name. And I only found out Jack Reed was a captain in OSI. He was the lead OSI officer at Ellsworth at that time. And through an email that Rick Doty sent me after about 5 years of trying to get him to answer my emails or talk to me, because the first time I saw him was on Ancient Aliens. And I said, I know that guy. He was at my debrief.
I was a counterintelligence officer for the Air Force Office of Special Investigation.
I was personally fascinated by the fact that Richard Doty had been involved in the aftermath of Mario's case. I knew about Doty because of a great book called Project Beta by Greg Bishop. Doty was an Air Force counterintelligence agent, basically tasked with performing a psychological operation on an innocent researcher named Paul Benowitz, who had seen an exotic craft at Kirtland Air Force Base. Doty convinced Benowitz that he was in touch with aliens, even receiving signals on his computer. This eventually drove Benowitz into psychiatric hospitalization. So the fact that Doty was part of Mario's debrief is fascinating, seems very important, and requires follow-up by some brave souls.
And up to that point, I had nobody.
Yeah.
I'd had nobody that could say, yeah, they were there or whatever, what have you. I tried running down my old flight chief and assistant flight chief, but with no success or anybody else. And especially Michael Johnson. Some money has been spent trying to locate Michael Johnson. We've looked in hospitals. We've looked in.
Can't find him anywhere.
No, sir. And I reported at the AARO in March of 23, I think, when I spoke with them.
Did AARO follow up at all?
I don't know. They never got back with me. 4 hours and 19 minutes, I spoke with them.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And they said I would get a copy of everything which had been, talked about. They say they don't record it. How do you send somebody a copy without recording something? Come on.
That's ridiculous.
Can you write that fast?
No, but I mean, it's also like,
and there's more than one person sitting there also.
Oh my God. But you're the government agency tasked for investigating UFOs and you don't record your conversation.
Correct.
It's absolutely absurd.
Yeah. And then 2 weeks later is when Kirkpatrick went on and said there was no substantial evidence.
Can you contact Michael Johnson's family?
I don't have any way. I don't have any numbers or anything. He said he was from Chicago, Illinois.
Uh-huh.
Believe me, every resource, including other law enforcement officers that I know, today's technology have not located him yet. Neither has AARO.
So what was your interaction with Doty?
Nothing. Not one thing. We never spoke or anything like that. He was directly reporting to Captain Jack Reed next to him.
Okay. So that's fascinating, right? That this guy who's clearly this disinfo agent, at least in the context of Benowitz, is showing up 7 years earlier, 8 years earlier in your case. And you don't know why.
Brand new. He was brand new then.
Mm.
So as a person that's very high in this whole thing said, those were the days that when he was probably, honestly, not changed in any way, perhaps. I just want to say that the right way. Because I email him once in a while, and he'll answer me back, whereas it took me about 5 years to get him to even do that. And then we got to be on a cast together.
So real quick, just context. He now has come out saying he's reformed and he apologizes for, his malpractice in the past. A lot of people are suspicious of that reform. It does feel a little bit sometimes to me like he's flooding the zone with this info. Like he'll talk about, 6 alien races.
Yeah.
And it just seems extremely speculative and not based on any sort of evidence.
Correct.
It's very weird.
Yeah. It's more than I know how to swallow. I only know that, what I witnessed is my incident, and anybody that I could get that's, that was there or has some idea of it or that I knew, I've done everything that I can to try and locate them. And he is the only person so far that I have found alive. And mind you, I'm 69 and I think he's older than I am. I think that's what he told me, that he was in his 70s, and I have no idea. I mean, when I saw that thing the other day about him saying it was from 78 to 88 when he was in OSI, really, really bothered me. And that was just last week that I saw that. And I'll try to find the program again, and I'll send you something about it.
Did you have any biological after effects after you had this experience?
Well, if you want me to, I'll explain that, because I get sent over to the flight surgeon's office after this entire debriefing takes place, and questions and like you wouldn't believe from my commander. And I just relayed everything that I just told you, with the exception of what I saw or what I thought I saw at the side window of my vehicle. Had I said that I saw these beings they would have immediately removed me from the PRP, personal reliability program. I'd have lost my clearance. I'd have lost my job. I'd have never been in the missile field again. And I was newlywed at the time, and I needed a job. And I loved what I was doing. I just had no idea that something like this could even happen.
So did you lie about what happened to you?
No, I did not lie. I just simply did not tell them what I saw out that side window.
Yeah.
I told them everything else, the size of the craft, and how we came upon it and flipping the facility lights at it. And I told them the entire story up to the point where what was out that window, I never said a word about.
Yeah.
So I had to write that in the report also, but that was after about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours of this debriefing in the commander's office. And once that was done, he said, well, we're going to have the flight surgeon take a look at you. And I said, yes, sir. Okay. So they loaded me up in his staff car and took me over to medical. And I'd never been in a flight surgeon's office before, thinking, oh boy, what's this going to be? And I'm still wet. Like I said, I'm still damp from the water, the basin bath, I call it. And I stripped down to my underwear and a t-shirt or something. And there was a nurse in the room, and there were 2 flight surgeons. And it was a time when they had these gray, like separating walls that were about 5 or 6 feet high with this little wavy glass at the top of it. So if you walked in another room over there, you could see heads, but you couldn't see what was going on. It used to be like a room divider or something. And that was important because the guys from OSI, they were on the other side of that wall, of that panel. And I knew they were there. And as the doctors, started, asking me questions, it was one tall and one short. They tested my ears, eyes, nose, throat, looked at my joints, my hands, my fingers, just literally everywhere. And then they'd walk over a few feet away and they'd talk a little bit, and I couldn't quite hear what they were saying. And the nurse was just over to my right and came back, and one of them grabbed a latex glove and he puts it on his hand. And I just thought, there's a nurse in here. And then he snapped that thing, I just thought, oh, really I did. I thought, oh man, I wasn't looking forward to this. And he goes, Airman Woods, you mind if I take a look at your gums? And that was farthest from my mind of anything in that room that day. And I said, excuse me. He goes, yeah, I need to look at your gums, your teeth. That was better than the alternative. I said, sure. Okay. So, I just sat right there, and he just opened my mouth, and he just took his index finger and his thumb, and he just went all the way around my gums and my teeth, squeezing tops and bottoms. And really took his time and spent time up here in the front under my tongue, just pressing down like on the bottom, like the floor of your jawbone or something. And, took him a couple of minutes. And believe me, if somebody puts their fingers in your mouth for a couple of minutes, it's a strange feeling. It's not something that you want to repeat or have repeated.
Why do you think he checked that first?
I have no idea. I have honestly no idea. And when he stopped, he popped the glove off. He says, you have a couple of burns on your body, right? And I said, excuse me? He goes, yeah, above your right eye and on the back of your right hand. Well, I didn't have a glove on this hand. And then my beret came down like this, as my beret was on my head, and it burned me right above my eyebrow right there. Now, I did have those Air Force glasses on. And I think that's why it had a strange curve in it in that little sunburn. But he says, we need to take a skin sample. And I said, oh, okay. And they pulled out, the nurse had this little tray with 2 types of, or 2 little stainless cylinders on it with cork tops on it. And I guess the tool was inside the little cylinder thing. He popped that off. He went up here and he just clipped a piece of skin off there, and he took the whole tool and he stuck it right down in there and put a cork on it, laid it on that tray. I felt it, didn't feel like much, just a little clip. Like clipping a nail or something, And then he did it on the back of my hand, once over here and once right over here. Same tool. I don't know if it could pick up 2 different pieces of flesh, but that's what he used, the same tool, put it in the other one, corked it and did that. And they walked over for a second and talked a few more moments. And then they turned around and said, thank you, but, you're done. You can go back over to the commander's office now. You can get dressed. I said, yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. So when I looked back up, OSI they had gone. So there was a driver in Colonel Spraker's vehicle. He was waiting on me. When I got dressed and went back out there, I got in a vehicle and went straight back to Colonel Spraker's office where OSI was there. So Colonel Spraker asked some more, and every time I asked about Michael Johnson, they kept telling me, "Don't worry about Michael Johnson. He's fine. He's fine." Really bothered me.
Yeah.
It
almost sounds like they're covering for something.
Yeah. Don't worry about Michael Johnson. He is fine. And, when I did go back to Colonel Spraker's office, again, I had to go and do a formal report again, and, do everything I was told. Then he told me I could sit down in front of him, which I did. And then Captain Jack Reed walked over to his desk, Colonel Spraker's desk, and handed him the paperwork. And at the same time, Colonel Spraker handed me these reporting forms. I don't know the number, but he handed me these forms. He said, "I need you to write down every single thing that happened on that site tonight from the time you got this alarm to the completion." And I went, oh. I mean, I print very well and I'm pretty detailed, and I'm happy to do that. Again, I omitted what I saw out my right window. So I never got a copy of that. They would not let me have a copy of that. And, which I found kind of odd, because any other time, you get Article 15 or something, you get a copy of it, something bad that you've done. And again, I felt as if I'd done something incorrect or wrong, because I knew I didn't strike that site. And that seemed to be a big question, is why didn't you strike this site? Of course, they had to have somebody address that alarm. I don't know who and how, but they did. But then Jack Reed walked over and handed him this other piece of paper as he was putting mine down. And it was like a non-disclosure agreement, but I don't even think they had that terminology then. I just think it was something that I was told. For one, this was now a classified incident. Mm-hmm. It's what I was told, and I was agreeing to that, and that I would not speak to any type of. They didn't even use the word social media. It was like media people at any time. If anybody comes into the missile field, you don't talk to anyone. Period. You don't even tell your wife. And now she thought it was odd because I should have been gone, come back in the morning of the fourth day. I had just departed the day before. Then this happened that night. And then I wasn't allowed to call her till about 3:00 when everything was said and done. And I agreed to that agreement. So Rick Doty's job, what he later said when I questioned him about it, was he was there. He was brought in to sent over to the flight surgeon's office to pick up our medical records, mine and Michael Johnson's. Now, I had no idea Michael Johnson was even over there, if he was truly there or not. I'm really not sure. I never saw him. I didn't see Michael again, as I said, for about 18 days. But he was there to study.
So you did see Michael 18 days later?
Yeah. He was there to pick up just our medical records and bring them back to his officer, which I just find indifference with that. There had to be something said about what just happened. I mean, for one, it was an incident of security, being that we didn't do what we were supposed to do, and we had 5 hours of missing time. They have to account to that for somebody higher than that base commander or deputy base commander and that squadron commander. They had to address somebody, say Wright Pat or wherever. They have to. Up-channel reporting has to take place at that incident. So I was able to call her at about 3:00, and she picked me up, and she sees me. I got a Band-Aid up here, and I got one on the back of my hand. What happened? I can't tell her. And I had to stick with that. And I said, just something happened. And I said, my partner and I, we were brought back in, I'll go back out. So I got extra days off. We'll go back out on the next rotation, but I never went back to November control. They sent me to Kilo control under the scrutiny of my flight chief and assistant flight chief and the OIC, which was a lieutenant, over all the over everything out there in that sector. And he had a he had not a name, but he had a terminology, not a flight chief, but an officer in charge of flight operations. I'm not sure. And he stayed there at Kilo Control. And of course, I was a member then, never a team leader again until the day 9 months later, I got my assignment to go to Korea. But getting back to that, about 2.5, 3 weeks later, we're living in, it's called Haynes Way Apartments. They're still there today in Rapid City. I get this, bar none, kid you not. When that knock came at that door, I knew it was Michael Johnson. I knew it was that man, and I'd never met him or had him in any kind of other than sitting in the cab of that truck, which that night he only said like 3 words to me, whatever, man, and outside too, or I don't know what it is. And that was back at the site when I was flashing the lights at it. That's all he'd ever said to me. Other than the fact that in the day room or on the way out on a bus, he said he was from Chicago, Illinois. He was not married and he lived in the barracks. I knew that. He knocks on my door open. I said, Michael, how you doing, man? I said, come on in here. We got to talk. Band-aids are off. Had no more marks. It was sunburn kind of thing. There was more mark what he took off than there was when the skin healed. Mm-hmm. So, which was nothing. I'm an old Tampa boy, so I'm used to sunburn, Mm-hmm. I look like this in the summertime. But he came in and I introduced him to my wife and I said, all right, this is what we're going to do. And he looked at me and I said, I want you to draw what you saw and I'm going to draw what I saw. Now, I hadn't drawn anything up to that time other than pyramids and trying to find out what the hell a pyramid, what it is, what it does, and what's supposed to be or why.
Real quick, before you say what you both draw, was he in a normal state again? He was talking, He was cool and like, cool. Okay.
Yeah, he was cool. He was still reserved, but he was cool.
Uh-huh.
Because we didn't really know each other that well.
Yeah, sure.
And so he comes in and he meets my wife, and I think I put him at the kitchen table. We had a round kitchen table, and I sat at the coffee table on the couch. And I started drawing, the craft, what I saw, and we talked about, what we heard, what I heard, everything. He saw the craft. He saw the black sphere in front of the vehicle, jumping up and down. He smelled the smell. He heard, do not fear. He heard all of that and saw every bit of it, but couldn't do nothing about it. It was as if he was just literally turned off and couldn't respond to anything. He felt everything. I ran that finger in his ear that deep. I felt really bad about that, but I just wanted him to know that I was checking. He knew that I was checking him for what was going on, but he couldn't do nothing about it. He couldn't undo himself or just move.
So how did you guys leave it? So did you drew very similar things?
Yeah, we drew the exact same pictures and everything.
Could we see the pictures and show the audience?
Well, I do have the drawings. Yeah. I don't have them from him, but I've got my rendition of them.
That's remarkable. And then after that, what happens between you and Michael?
We were there an hour and a half.
And it was good.
And it was good vibes all the way through. He had some tea or something. And we talked some more. We said, hey, well, we need to get together again and chat some more, And he said, yeah, I agree with that. That was the last time I ever saw him.
You couldn't get in touch after that?
No.
You tried?
No. Yeah. I don't know where he went. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he was sent somewhere else. It wasn't 8 months later. Well, it was about 6 months later, I got promoted to an NCO, non-commissioned officer, buck sergeant. So I know he had to go. He outranked me by 2 months. So he had to be upgraded also or promoted to an NCO. And,
have you tried looking up his records?
Yeah, everything, anything and everything.
You can't find anything?
I can't find a damn thing.
Do you think the guy in the gray tweed suit, I think Bob Jacobs talked about two guys in gray tweed suits.
I think he was a GS, government service employee.
Okay. And so he was probably
Bob and I talked about that too.
So he was probably the highest ranking guy in the room.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, for GS service, perhaps. But Colonel Spraker was the highest ranking in that room. And I don't remember the rank of the deputy base commander.
If you have 170, people seeing a thing around nuclear bases and they're all told to sign non-disclosures after they see a thing, What do you think the real number is, given how many thousands of people have worked at nuclear bases, in the 70-year plus American nuclear program history? You think it's over 1,000?
It has to be. I would say that anybody, even today, they're still active. Ellsworth has been decommissioned on the missile side. I think that was in 1992. And the only missile that ever flew out of the ground in the Minuteman program was at November 2, where I was located. Not during my time, but in the 60s. And I believe it flew for 5 seconds. It was detonated, a dummy warhead. They wanted to make sure that it would launch out of the silo. That's all. Mind's eye view from every one of those sites are standalone sites. Those missiles are standalone with that launch control facility. So in each launch control facility, you've got 10 1.2 megaton missile systems sitting in the ground all around you. I mean, up to miles away from you. As I said, November 5 was the closest launch facility to November control. If you had the technology to shut off one missile or to alarm one missile, would you not know that that's the shortest response time? And this is really reaching, but why didn't they set off November 10 or November 9 up by Castle Rock? Or why was it they didn't have more time to spare or what? They just set off November 5. They knew we were coming. I really do think that. I mean, I don't think it was, they knew. I think they know they can see the power grid under the ground because everything out there is underground. Everything. That's how they keep power on in the wintertime. They built underground all these years.
Also, the response on the human side for you feels oddly routine. If that were like the first or only incident that had ever happened, you'd think that, the superiors would be freaked out, right? Like it's like you have nuclear missile silos. Like, these are, it's our, top of the food chain when it comes to American defense and offense.
Or so we think.
Yeah.
There are other variations. And I think they in turn gauge our overall knowledge on splitting the atom.
Yeah.
And what's in those two hemishells, what source we're using, where it's, no matter if it's plutonium, it's uranium, or what it is. And I worked at those facilities too. I was with US DOE for quite some time also as a security inspector. So I've been through a lot of these laboratories. I've been to Los Alamos, Sandia, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, the Y-12 facility, Oak Ridge Gaseous Diffusion Facility, and General Electric neutron devices where triggering mechanisms were built, RTGs. So
where were you at Schenectady, New York?
No. Largo, Florida.
Okay.
That was their DOE facility, which is now decommissioned. They don't do it any longer. They made the triggering device there that is used that you can see on it.
Yeah, it's clear whatever's going on the UFO side is very interested in not only nuclear weapons, but it seems like nuclear energy. Like,
anything in which we use an atom for. But I honestly think that they gauge our intelligence on that in some way. And that's why they're so closely scrutinized. The other thing that's funny, I think they have a sense of humor. And the reason I think that is when you get all these sites that are shut down and everybody scrambles to get, they're all offline and everything, like what happened to Robert Salas, for instance, and his commander.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is when one of these sites alarm and start its countdown as it's going to launch.
Yeah.
So the response to that, once you're dispatched, if the launch crew wants to dispatch you, if they're really worried, because they have an override also that they can do something with, and I don't know exactly how that works, but they'll dispatch you to the site with your F-150 Ford pickup truck and all your goodies. You got your ditty bag, your weapon, your stuff. You're ready to be out there for 2 weeks if you have to. Every time you leave, you can stay out in that missile field for a very long time, period. The missile is counting itself down. It's going to launch. You go to the site, you open up the gates, you drive your vehicle right up on top of the blast door, which is at ground level, right on top of an octagon-shaped 9-ton door, and sit right on top of that site, right on top of that blast door. Put your vehicle in neutral. If you can find a rock big enough, chalk both tires. Just chalk one front, one back so it don't roll. If there's a little bit of lean to one of the doors or something. That's what we were told. Grab your stuff, get off that site, and set up a 1 mile ECP entry control point and wait for further orders. in hopes that if this thing cannot be stopped or overridden, when that blast door blows out from underneath that vehicle, it's going to fall down on top of that rocket. And all it's in hopes to do is to damage it to offset its guidance control, so it'll just go off aimlessly like a scud and crash. That's what they do. And get down to 10 or 15 seconds and it stops. Then everything's normal again.
Crazy.
And people rolling up on these sites have sometimes seen those craft and they blow away, and then that happens, you know.
Yeah.
So I would venture to say that there were 800 security policemen at Ellsworth Air Force Base while I was there. That's standard configuration. That's not an operational readiness inspection or anything like that. They were just normally 800 or right there about security policemen, law enforcement, and or security. Anybody that worked in that missile field, I would say 1 out of every 4 has probably seen something in the night sky, because everybody works rotating shifts. Whether they report it or tell their partner about it is up to them. But I'd venture to say it's that frequent.
That's why.
And that's just at Ellsworth. That doesn't include Minot. That doesn't include Malmstrom or F.E. Warren in Wyoming.
Yep.
I've been told or asked just recently if I'd appear before Congress.
Yeah.
And I would appear before Congress.
Yeah.
And I know that's pretty hair-raising for a lot of people, but when they get all the scientists and all the pilots and everything else out of the way with these huge credentials. I was just a security policeman at 23 years of age. I have a high school education. I have some college. I've been mostly technical schools all my life, and I really try to read a lot and do a lot of things to educate myself further. It just didn't work out for me being able to do the things, you know, going to college and so forth. When they're done with all of that and they want a real up close and personal account, then they've got to come to me sooner or later. And you don't have to put that in this, but you know, and that's what somebody from up there told me. They said eventually they got to hear somebody that's had a up close and personal time with these things. So being that I was on duty, I was a prime candidate for that, as I've been told. And I wish I had more witnesses. I wish there were people I could just pull up out of nowhere, you know, that were there. But, you know, there's just so much time has passed. You know, we've been through so much with COVID and everything else. I don't know.
What about the guy you said you were buddies with, where you ran in and you started signaling what you thought was a B-52 at the time? What was his name?
Bill Holloman.
Bill Holloman. Are you still in touch with Bill?
Well, I know it's William something Holloman. We called him Bill.
Uh-huh.
And he was from North Carolina. I have searched how many names with the last name of Holloman. I don't know. And that's the only way I've even.
But did you even speak to him one-on-one after that, being like,
no.
Remember when we signaled the thing?
I was never, I never went back to November Control. They sent me to Kilo Control. They completely separated us. I never saw Michael Johnson again until about 3 weeks later.
So they just separated you. And how far is Kilo Control from November Control?
Well, honestly, it's a sister flight, but it's where the supervision hang their hat at nights instead of us being at November Control or or Oscar flight or any of the other flights where you don't have the supervision of a flight chief and an assistant flight chief. You do at Kilo. So they have a way of monitoring, watching every single thing that you do. And also the OIC.
And so you just never saw Bill again?
No, maybe at guard mount once or twice. Hey, Bill, that kind of thing, just passing.
You ever say, hey, Bill, you know, what about that?
I wanted to, but it never really presented itself. And there were a couple other guys there, even that Sergeant Garza. I'd love to have spoken with him again because, and he was from Texas. I remember that. We talked about it. And, cause I was just that close born in Port Arthur, but I was born in Virginia. And my parents and they moved to Port Arthur. My dad could ship in and out of there.
And you received a hypnotic regression about all of this, right?
I did. I certainly did. Bob Upton did my first one and Yvonne Smith did my second one.
What came out?
Well, the inside of the craft.
What was that like?
I've got some drawings of it, but what I saw or what I experienced in my mind, was not all pleasant.
Hmm.
And these were the one that was messing with me was a very tall one that was doing the, one thing to me. Whereas in regression number 2, I found out that Michael was laying opposite to me, and there was one of the short ones or small ones between us both. And he was facing one direction, I was facing the opposite direction, kind of like that would be. And
what were they doing? Were they taking samples or? Well,
the tall one did something to my wrist, and I kept telling him how to hurt me, and he said something, we don't hurt you or something like that. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and listen to it again. I didn't even listen to my first regression session for a year. I was so afraid of what I would hear or what I would find out or what I would see in the actual incident itself. That when I sat down from inside that window, I want you to know that the words "do not fear" traveled through my body like a vibration. Like a hiss.
A telepathic.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I kept hearing over and over, "Do not fear, do not fear, do not fear." And
was it a good vibe or bad as far as your sense of that?
It was
neutral?
It was complete. It was as if, when somebody says something, you'll say, "What?" or "Huh?"
Uh-huh.
There's none of that. There's no misinterpretation of someone speaking to you. You know exactly what's being said to you.
Was there sort of a sense of their intention as positive or negative, or was it
assuring? Assuring, I think. No matter what you see visually, do not fear.
Mm.
And that's what we seem to have the hardest problem with, is what we're seeing visually.
If you had kind of a best guess, do you think they had positive intentions or negative, or?
I think they had positive.
What do you think?
But they fulfill their mission, whatever that mission is, whether it's to obtain DNA material or what have you, or some kind of a programming, or I don't know, whatever they want to do, they're going to do.
Outside of like the obvious, which is you experienced this kind of crazy paranormal disruption in your life, was this an inflection point, or did it change your life in a dramatic way afterwards?
Oh, it did.
How so?
I had to find out everything about archaeology and pyramids.
And so that was just something that it almost felt like it was installed inside of you or downloaded.
Yes.
And why?
Still today.
Why do you think you became so interested in that?
I have no idea.
Do you know that the Air Force paid for this movie called Stargate? Have you ever seen this movie, Stargate?
Absolutely.
So, there's a Stargate in the pyramid. It's sort of this portal, this like time travel machine. Do you think that might be related to, why you're so interested in pyramids?
I think they were power generators, and whatever they generated power to was worldwide. And I think it was at a time in which we have been completely blacked out from.
Have you heard of Christopher Dunn?
I have. Yes, an engineer. Yes, I have.
What do you think of his theory?
I think his theory is absolutely correct. Robert Schoch, I think absolutely. I think the erosion marks on that Great Sphinx and everything else around it.
Can you recapitulate or can you retell Christopher Dunn theory just for the audience?
Well, the archaeological tools in which was used to create and carve or cut this granite are not in the archaeological array of tools of copper and wooden chisels today. And some form of advanced mathematics was used in order to create what they did. And even just the placement of the Great Pyramid itself. I mean, the entire plateau, it's the only place that can support that weight. And the entire plateau was built before the pyramids were placed on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So who had that technology and what was used? Who mandated that? What pharaoh woke up one morning after his dates and whatever else he ate and said, let's build that plateau so it can hold, how many millions of pounds does this thing weigh? I have no idea right now, but I mean, 750 feet from corner to corner and 432 feet high. Is that right? Uh,
Do you,
on 13 acres. I mean, how can that be?
do you think the beings you experienced are aliens, or do you think they're humans, or what exactly did the entities you encountered look like?
Oh, they look like grays. They look like the small grays, but the one behind them, I guess you would classify him as a tall gray. On Whitley Strieber's book, Communion,
Mhm.
of course, the first time I saw that picture, I froze in my stride,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to have that book. And at Barnes and Noble, or wherever it was at the time when it came out, and I literally, before I opened the first page, I literally just sat and stared at that picture for many hours before I ever even read his book.
Do you think that there's actually a line from Communion by Whitley Strieber where it's like this weird joke? You know, I think he or his wife comments on how ugly the aliens are, and the alien turns back and he goes, "Someday soon, my dear, you'll look like us." So it's this implication that actually we're kind of turning into these beings.
In 10,000 years, will we have these smaller appendages, our little fingers, our little toes? How will our bodies be at that particular point in time? You know, how will our diets change? How will light change? How will radiation that affects our atmosphere today, how will it change in the future? How will it change us completely as we become a spacefaring civilization? And we will be, and you know, whenever that could take place, we will do that. How will that change us without the gravity that we undergo today, and the things in which we live with today? You know, radio waves, 5G, everything has an effect on you.
So you think these beings could be us from the future?
No, I don't think they are. I don't think we're going to be that. I don't think we're that lucky.
So what do you think they are? Do you think they're from another dimension, or?
They could be. I mean, the technology is wide open. Anything you can imagine probably is.
What was the craft like? So you're in the inside of this thing. What did it look like?
A beehive.
Beehive.
Yeah.
How so?
Well, there were, from my looking around as I did in that playground, like I always try to take a mental picture of something. There were just multi-levels with all these small grays everywhere, going to and fro and doing whatever they were doing. I just got to look for a moment, and I was following one, and even the floor and the boards around the bottom of the floor had energy. Was everything emanated power in some way? The walls.
Was there a humming associated?
Not that I can remember.
And it almost felt like the tall gray was maybe in charge of these smaller grays.
Absolutely. In that room. Another thing too, I was not on a table. I was, from my memory, I was on some type of I was like wrapped in a triangular kind of beam or something that was body length, about 4 foot in the air. And as like a strange light would, not a strange light. It's even hard to describe, but it was as if I was inserted in something that was some type of a force field or some kind of a holding field that they could move you around in. Like a gurney without wheels, a table without a back or wheels or legs attached to it. And I felt as if, you know, when they reached in, or when he lifted my arm up, lifted me up right here on my wrist, you know, it exited that pyramidal field or whatever it was above me, and it was in his atmosphere at that time. In hypnosis, that's what I saw. The other thing was, this is most interesting. I'm taken to a room. When I first get there, I'm taken into this room, if you can call it a room. Everything's generated. Everything's power. There's power on every wall, every nook and cranny. There were no buttons or places to insert a tape or anything like that. But the whole place is powered. And there were all these old things like sewing machine table with a Singer sewing machine on it. Those old 50 style lamps that went from the floor to the ceiling and had bulbs sticking off of them like that. TV in a cabinet.
It was like an antique shop for future games
like a museum and this is a old wooden box radio, and I found that to be so cool because I ended up buying a US RKO radio in a mahogany cabinet that worked with tubes from a rancher there in South Dakota that I wish I'd have never had wooden knobs and everything on it and worked beautifully. And from when I saw that, I had to have one of these damn radios. I don't know why. And this one was much nicer than what I saw, but a steam iron standing. I drew pictures of it, the best of my recollection of everything. And then I was told in the very back of the room, there was a round window, but it looked like it was a round window with a slice taken out of it, like a pie with a slice removed from it. And I was told I could go look out that window. But I was too afraid to walk over there and look out of it for some reason. I don't know why, but I felt at ease, but I still didn't want to know or didn't want to see out that window. Something really bothered me about looking out that window. And I was told that twice that I could go look out the window, and I didn't. So then I was told to follow and I did. I followed a small gray in front of me, little legs, and like a little gray type, like spandex suit or something on, I guess. I mean, these things are so foreign to you. This whole visual concept is so foreign to you. It's very hard to find words for a lot of it, even after 44 years, and it's just difficult. And I followed him, turned left in this small little opening area and went into this room where it was just fogged. And then that's where my memories end, but that's where the thing was done to my wrist. And then, I don't know, from that point on, that seemed to be right around the end of it.
Did it feel like a dreamlike state, or did it feel physical in this hypnotic regression?
No, it felt physical.
It felt real.
The first time I was hypnotized, which was Bob Upton, I had a pretty bad time because I'm not a person ever thinking that I could be hypnotized to start with. I'm pretty strong-willed and I feel as if I'm common sensed also. And I just thought, hypnosis is for someone else. It's just not for me. But Robert wanted me to try it. So I said, okay. And a funny thing, because we had been through a hurricane just prior to that down in Brunswick, Georgia. And I had some roof damage and deck damage on the back of my home. And they were re-roofing my house that day. Now, what a day to be hypnotized on by this guy who he came up from Jacksonville, 67 miles south of me. And he's like the lead hypnotic regression person for MUFON at the time. I don't know if he still is, but he has my admiration. I couldn't do his job.
And you didn't get any sort of weird sense from him that he had ulterior motives?
No. Now, Robert Hastings had given him a set of questions that he was going to ask me, and he told me that, and I was fine with that. They were re-roofing my home. So you can imagine there's like 15 people on my roof, and my home has got a really steep roof. I couldn't do it. I can't even climb up there anymore, but so they're literally peeling off plywood and replacing plywood, nailers and everything else, things being tossed around up there. I never heard a single air gun going off during that hypnosis session. That's why I knew I was hypnotized. I never heard any of that. But he took me down to a level. He had a way of doing it that evidently worked. But once I did, and I confronted what I saw, it really upset me a great deal. It literally coming to face and smelling that smell again, hearing those words again. I mean, I got that deep into it, and I never thought that I could. I don't know if a person's mind is changed, as we had said earlier. I don't know if that's what happens, but
well, Was it cathartic at all, or was it just purely painful?
It got painful. It really did. I mean, when I visualized and saw what was being done in my wrist and the way in which it was being done, it just, I mean, he could have cut my whole arm off. I wouldn't have known the difference. I couldn't, there's nothing I could do to stop it. You know, I mean, it could have been the end of my life right there. And that's how.
Did you, and no implants as far as the puncture?
Oh, I have no idea. And those are on the other side of my body anyway, or those pock marks. But,
do you still have the marks at all?
Yeah.
Or can I see them?
Sure. Here. Right there.
Yes.
Right there. Let's had these socks on.
Wow.
Squeeze the blood up.
Wow.
You can see it.
Wow. Yeah, those look, I mean, just like perfectly vertically aligned.
Well, I had a doctor who's no longer with us.
But like so clearly not like a spider, but like way too big for that.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
What would you say, like a couple centimeter, maybe a centimeter each?
Dr. Mark Gold, he did, I had back surgery years ago, and he did that. And we had talked, he was a really great guy. Unfortunately, COVID took him way too young, as it did many, many people. And we were sitting in my backyard one night, and after he had looked at this, and he said, I'm going to be honest with you, Mario, because I wanted to get something from him recorded, you know? And I didn't have that chance to. The last time I saw him was probably 2019, and he had some family issues and had to go up north, and where he got COVID and he died. And his kids went to school with my kids at Frederica Academy on St. Simon's Island in Georgia. But he said, what perplexed him was that there was no known life-saving event that he could think of, even including up to a car accident, that anything would be put in there or down here to either put in something or take out something. He said, and they're exactly the same depth and the same size, top to bottom. He said, so I find that really odd, because I told him the whole incident, what happened, and he's like, holy crap.
Well, it indicates a technology or paradigm well above our medical understanding. Yeah.
And if you look at this up close under a microscope, which has been done from a magnifying scope, it has a little dimple right in the top of it, like you drop water in drop a rock in water and it goes bloop, bloop. That little dimple is right in the middle of both of them.
Yep.
That is really strange. So I don't know when these happened. I honestly don't. I don't remember healing from them. I didn't say it happened during my incident in 77. I don't know where they came from.
Do you feel like you have a mission associated with this interest in pyramids, where it's like, at the time at which you leave this earth, you want to accomplish something related to the pyramids?
Man, that's a great question. Yes, I would like to know the answers. I would like to see those tools, as Christopher Dunn says, I would like to see those tools, and finally the admission that they had tools far greater than what we ever have imagined. And I think just like melting rock in South America, and Sakase-Human and some of the other facilities where these rocks are, 13-sided and just an inch and a half and stuck in a hole that's 2 feet deep all the way through the entire rock. How do you do that without softening that stone?
Do you feel like
the site?
Do you feel like these sites globally, I feel like this is what Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson.
I love that guy, man.
Robert Schoch, all these guys are kind of getting into this idea that maybe a lot of this ancient geological, architecture, megalithic architecture that's precociously astronomically aligned in a way that we don't even understand today. And it lines up with, ice age or pre-ice age,
certainly,
kind of vernal equinox.
Absolutely.
And so do you think that a lot of this architecture these were maybe kind of celestial ascent chambers that were stargates to another world?
Sure.
And maybe things were getting kind of gnarly or cataclysmic, and they were portals to elsewhere.
Totally believe that.
Have you ever seen the Netflix show Dark by any chance?
I've seen some of it, I believe.
So it involves missing people around nuclear bases and a secret time travel program.
Oh, I got to see that then.
Yeah, you should check it out because
I wish they'd call me. I'd like to know.
you know Lawrence Bell is so Bell Aircraft. So they broke the sound barrier in 1947.
Yeah, X-15.
X-15, Chuck Yeager, exactly. And so there's an article in 1956 where they're saying we're going to beat gravity, and it's right around the bend. And Lawrence Bell's quote from this article is, "We are already working with nuclear fuels to cancel out gravity." And so you got to think if time travel is possible at any point in the future, it's probably always been possible, right? And so where would we discover some sort of time travel program? It would probably be co-located with nuclear programs.
Absolutely.
So, and then how would you affect timelines? You might do it with, particular people who represent kind of nodes or whatever, who get interested in things like pyramids after, their encounters. And so do you think that, that's a possible explanation, that maybe a future time travel program represents an overlay over all of these nuclear sites in a way that somehow, might profoundly shift humanity and might also keep us alive? Because if you think about where is the center of the apocalypse, it's these nuclear sites. I mean, what's going to, dictate the end of the world or not? It's going to be these sites. So I have no idea. This is crazy speculation, but so gravity is very related with time and general relativity. So if, Lawrence Bell is right, and they're kind of using nuclear fuels to cancel out gravity, maybe you're using nuclear fuels to mess with time too.
It just makes you wonder how much technology that has been buried somehow or another, has been removed from our everyday conscious thought, and why was that removed? Did we get so dangerous to ourselves? I mean, unfortunately, I wish we weren't so warlike.
Yeah.
Because you don't believe something that I believe in, we're supposed to go to war over that. I just dislike that so much, and religion, I don't want to get into that, but what you believe is fine with me.
Yeah.
What you believe is fine with me.
Yeah.
What I believe is fine with me.
Yeah.
And why can't it just be that?
Do you think go. Sorry.
No. I do think that this technology that we're speaking of, even though we don't know it truly exists, it points to its existence in some way. And one day I think we will find the magic key. Somewhere there's a craft, if it hasn't already been discovered, that's sitting in a cave somewhere, or under the ocean somewhere, under a ledge somewhere, or maybe even circling the planet, invisible, that we can't see, we're going to run into one day. I don't know.
Well, maybe it'll happen sooner than
maybe it'll happen sooner or later. And I just hope, I honestly do. And I get asked this all the time. Well, you think they're going to come and defeat us and take us over? And my answer is always the same. Look, if any civilization that's out there comes here within their own lifetime and leaves and goes back in their same lifetime, that's 10,000 light years advanced to us. That's what Carl Sagan said that.
Mm-hmm.
Bar none. That's just 10,000 light years advanced to us. So think about that. We're like the ants in an ant bed, and they're standing in there looking at us, I often think about the reverse visualization that night when I was flipping the facility lights at that craft, whatever it was at the time to me. What would I have thought in my mind had I been up there looking down at this rectangular shaped site? Somebody's turning off and on the lights real quick in succession. Why would I flash back? Or wait a minute, how does that person down there see us up here? Why would they know that we're not supposed to be here, or we're just up here observing? How would they know that? Do we find out who this guy is, or person is, I should say, or what? I don't know. I've done that reverse thing a couple of times to try to give answers to myself, which always end up, with a zero. I'm right back where I started. But I do want to say that where New Lake Reservoir Dam was, it's a Pythagorean triangle from November 1 to November 5 over to New Lake Reservoir and back to November 1 control. I believe, based on that position of New Lake Reservoir Dam, that's where that craft was. It was over that body of water when I saw it.
Mm.
Why, I don't know, but there's always some type of there's a lot of sightings over water.
Yes.
And the deepest part of that reservoir, I think, is only like 40 feet. I could be wrong. It's under reconstruction right now because I've been talking about it a lot for the last couple of years. I don't know if that's done anything, but the people in Newell are really good. And while we were there doing that filming, there were a couple of individuals. We're out on Ormond Road. That's the road that November 5 is on. It's a dirt road still today. And there's a golf course off to the left side of it when you turn out of Newell on the Ormond Road. And that day, the town's so small that when we arrived there early in the morning to film, all these people started seeing us. So news travels fast through there, and they're great people. I've always had a lot of respect for those folks, and great cooks too. Great Western Plains cooks, man. They could cook some good food, but you would not believe the parade we had going up and down Ormond Road watching this film, and it was the strangest thing because I had not been back to November 5 since that night. And the producer did not want to go directly in front of November 5 site itself because there's now like a small cattle processing facility built on it, because it's built on the bedrock. And when they detonated and collapsed the silos in and returned it, they left the fencing and the rock base there. So these ranchers used it to store hay on or do something on their cattle. The fencing is all still there. We could have used another site, but instead they went about 150 yards to the east of the site, and we were looking into a plain field, while I'm holding up my drawings and a drone's over my shoulder taking pictures of them. I just felt that not very good. And, but when I got out of that vehicle and walked toward that site, man, that feeling came over me. I about went to my knees. And, in hypnosis, when, Robert Upton finished that hypnosis, something was wrong with me. And about 4 days later, I went to, my, pulmonologist, and I was in AFib. And, so I had to go in the next day because my heart was out of rhythm. Never had any heart problems whatsoever. Ever in my life, I've always been an athlete. And of course, they put the patches on and shocked me and resynced me, I guess. And about a week went by, and I started thinking about this thing over and over again. Boom, I went right back into AFib. So I had to go back and do it again. And then they put me on medication. So I have to take medication, and anytime you go in AFib, I guess they put you on a blood thinner.
Do you regret having done the hypnotic regression?
No, because it really gave me some insight.
Yeah.
And it made it a lot easier when I did the session just last year or year before last with Yvonne Smith in California.
Do you ever experience weird electromagnetic effects with your body or like what sort of stuff?
Like a light going off or something when I walk in a room, a fluorescent light.
Fluorescent light.
Yeah, I've got a little light fixture. It's named Honda.
Phones dying quickly, anything like that?
No, I have had some other strange things go on though. Robert Hastings and I talked about that with emails vanishing everywhere. Mm-hmm. Off the cloud and everywhere else, just wiped clean. I've had that happen, as has he. But I've had several incidents where that has really bothered me. Then the night of December 17th, 2017, my son was in his room. He was home from working. He was living in Florida, came home to visit. And it was right at 4:11 a.m. And that's also another thing about waking up at certain times of the night, 1:11, 3:33, 4:11. It's just strange how that happens. But, I pay attention to it. And, I have a room in the back of the house because I worked 12-hour shifts. So, and it rotated. So sometimes I'd have to, sleep during the day, till 3 p.m., get up to go in for a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift, so it was rotating. So I had to have it darkened out so you could sleep. I just can't sleep in sunlight. I don't know anybody that can, but, anyway, I was there sleeping and had to get up for work. And all of a sudden I opened my eyes and I had I'm standing at the foot of my bed. I have never been a person to sleepwalk ever in my life that I know ever. And I'm standing at the foot of my bed, holding onto my bed frame with my right hand. And directly in front of me, there's about a 4.5 or 5 foot hole diameter in the north wall of my bedroom. And in that circle that vanished immediately, like sparks flew off either side of it. I was like, what the heck? Anyway, soon as that flashed out or went away, all the lights in my house started flickering just all over the house. And then these strange alarms I started hearing them. And my son popped through my door and he goes, Dad, what the hell's going on? He goes, what's going on? I said, I don't know, son. He goes, what's those alarms? And I said, I don't know. I grabbed my pistol. I didn't know why. I was going to clear my house, and which I did. I couldn't explain what I just saw and hadn't even verbally said anything about it yet. And it was just right in front of me. And mind you, there's 2 dressers that were partially gone or in that dark circle that I saw. And so I cleared my house and I go into the kitchen area and all the lights were just barely on, like they're just like the candle light all throughout the house. And the stove, the oven, the microwave, and the refrigerator, they have low voltage alarms on them, which I never knew. That's what the alarms were. They were all going off. So everything seemed to be normal other than the fact the lights were on. I tried flipping on lights and they wouldn't come on. They just come on barely and just flicker for a minute. I just turned it back off, but the light over the stove, it was doing that. Every light, every electrical component in my home was affected. Everything, doorbell system, everything. So I went back and talked to my son. I said, Jake, what the heck was that, man? He goes, I don't know, Dad. It's weird. He goes, it's really weird. You can call him and talk to him about it. So I said, well, I'll call Georgia Power in the morning when I get up, So I just put everything down. I laid back down and just thinking, what was that? And about 8:00, my son pops through my door and he knocks first. He says, hey, Dad. He goes, Georgia Power's here. And I said, what? He said, yeah, Georgia Power's in the front yard. And I live on an acre. So to the street from my front porch is about 200 feet. And so I got dressed and I hobbled out there and these guys are out there working on where the power distribution comes in to my home. And it's all underground. My home was built in 97. And so I found the supervisor. I said, hey, how you doing, sir? I told him my name. He goes, this your house? And I said, yes, sir. He just looked at me. And I said, wow. I said, what happened? He goes, he just looked at me and he said, well, you lost power, lost the leg of power. I said, dang, does that mess up the whole neighborhood? He looked at me and says, no. He says, just your house. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you lit up our board downtown like the 4th of July out here. And I said, well, how did I do that? We were all asleep. He said, I don't know. He said, but we're going to have to replace this leg so you have power in your home. He said, come on, I'll show you something. So they had already taken this big dolly and it had like transformer equipment. I've got pictures of it. You call Robert Hastings, first thing. They take this transformer thing on a dolly, take it to the back where my meter is, and they jumper into that meter box. So to establish power or to refine the power going in my home. Instead of just 2 legs, it gives it a 3rd leg. Somehow it converts it, and I don't know how that works. But I got pictures of it, and he said, you'll be fine till we can come out and replace that wire. And it took them about 2 days, 3 days, and they were back, and they did it. But I just kept questioning what I had seen and what had happened and why that happened, and ours was the only house affected. A couple of weeks later, one of our neighbor's kids come by that my son used to play with. He stopped his truck. He's got an F-150. He says, hey, Mr. Woods. And he's been in my backyard. These kids have had parties. They all shot bows and arrows together, BB guns, name it. We do all that stuff. Ride motorcycles. He goes, hey, Mr. Woods. He said, I was cutting my grass. And he waved at me and I stopped and he stopped. And he goes, hey, what was going on there? last week or so when all those lights were in your backyard. And I said, what are you talking about? He hesitated for a second. He goes, your backyard was lit up like a Hollywood set or something. He said, like those great big lights they say up in the air. He says, the whole backyard was lit up. I said, what do you mean, man? He said, yeah, it was 4:00 in the morning. He was leaving for work. That's how he saw that. And I said, well, I've only got 2 spotlights right there on the corner of that room outside. And I said, and on the corner of the back and the lights on the rear patio, And he goes, I don't know, but it was lit up like you wouldn't believe. And I just kept it to myself. I said, man, what did happen? Really? So what interest could they would have in a 65-year-old man or whatever age I was at that time? What could they possibly want? I mean,
What do you think?
I have no idea. I honestly don't have a clue.
What do you think? What do you hope the world gets from your testimony?
Understanding, perhaps, or possibility of, perhaps not to fear as much, and not to think that they're here to defeat us, because if they were, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. They'd have done it long ago, anyhow.
Do you think they're hybridizing themselves with us?
Could very well be. Depends upon maybe their situation on their own planet. Maybe they're overcrowded, perhaps, or something's dying there, or progression through space. You can't always get back to the starting point. Maybe they have to occupy worlds along the way in their great expansion.
Well, it sounds like even on Ellsworth that it was kind of an open secret that, a lot of people had some interesting experiences even before you, Mario. Do you think, I was talking with Robert Hastings and, he was noting that he had 167 ICBM security personnel, radar operators, guys on bases like yourself who've experienced crafts.
Yes.
And then I remember I asked him, I was like, Robert, what percentage of these people have had close encounters of the third kind where they've actually met beings? And he said something like 7 or 8, but then he said, I didn't ask anybody. Those were the people that volunteered. And I think about the culture of secrecy and humility when it comes to working at, nuclear bases. If you have 7 or 8 people who you're just incidentally finding out are having, close encounters of the third kind and actually seeing beings, it's probably over 100. It's of the 170. It's probably a massive,
and never alone, always with a partner. You are never alone in any nuclear facility. It's a 2-man rule. There has to be 2 of you at all times.
Are there other cases like yours that you've found out about where the partner sort of seems to disappear or go missing?
Terry Lovelace and his partner, Toby.
Because Terry's still around, right?
Oh, yeah. He's a great guy.
But Toby's gone.
Toby's gone. Terry told me that he never fully recovered after their incident. Now, he was not on duty. They were simply on a camping trip.
And is Toby like in some facility, mental health facility, or is he just like no trace of him? Terry can't even find him.
No. He was available. And of course, the VA, they were giving him, whatever pills or whatever to help his anxiety. And from my understanding, he had a really bad drinking problem from that period of time. And some people, I guess that's the way it affects. And it's really quite sad. And he was a real light-skinned black guy also. And we talk about that correlation between us and our partners, and it happened the same year. Also, in that movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out, I went to see it in Rapid City at the theater, on Main Street, still there today. Or the building is. I'm not sure if the theater is or not, but I think it is. And that part where Roy Neary is crossing the railroad tracks and he's looking at the map, got the flashlight in his mouth, and that light pops on. If you'll notice, during that period of time, his body was as if he was being, whatever he was hearing or feeling was talking to him or programming him on the inside. He's doing some kind of a weird, I should say, receiving of whatever is giving him. And you can see it, and he portrays it very well, and it really made me think a lot. Because when I saw that movie, it was as if what's going on in a missile field right now, not just to me, but to these craft are out there. There's cattle mutilations going on. Linda Moulton Howe's in the area. I tried contacting her in like 20, might have been before that, but she got my email in 2014. I had sent something to her. And she worked at a station in Denver, Colorado. It was, like, I don't know if she was in what kind of news she did, but she was investigating cattle mutilations all throughout the Northwest where we were. And, of course, we were told not to speak to any media people whatsoever. But the point is that when he underwent what he did under that light, before that craft let him go, it seemed to put something in his mind, which really struck me before it stopped, and moved. I had to literally get up out of my seat, and I ran out and sat on the curb on Main Street in Rapid City, because I what I just saw felt as if it was a direct replay of what I just went through, only a little bit different, where, the craft was above him, and these little guys came up to the side of our vehicle. Just like that. And it's really hard to deal with, you know?
Often it feels like the ear bones are messed with, the bones dealing with balance and orientation. And then this is an interesting kind of connection around them checking your teeth. My buddy made a documentary on this guy, Andrej Puharich. And Puharich helped start the MK Ultra program. So it's like CIA brainwashing.
Yugoslavian guy, wasn't he? Is he?
I think he was.
I read something about a guy with that name. I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah, he's like, Eastern European or Russian. Yeah, maybe Yugoslavian. And he was at Northwestern, and he had, the Round Table Institute at Maine, where they were sort of summoning stuff. And then he had this actually School of Space Children in upstate New York, where he was, studying all sorts of telepathy and download channeling. Actually, the book Star Trek came. He had this one channeler named Phyllis Schaefer, and she wrote a book called The Only Planet of Choice that was channeled, and she was in communication with the Nine, quote unquote, which is this council of possible ET beings. And they were talking about the Earth as a bottleneck of consciousness. We have to get past this bottleneck in order to ascend. Whatever, fascinating stuff. But interestingly, Puharich found this guy who was sort of schizophrenic, and he was hearing voices in his head. But it almost sounded like the voices he was hearing were similar to like what somebody would describe in an alien telepathy experience, where he was getting kind of immediate downloads. And
wow,
Puharich was studying him, and they realized he was a construction worker, and he was working with sawing metals or whatever. And so they found these fine metals in his teeth. And that somehow, in Puharich's belief, was that extremely low frequency radio waves were actually responsible for thought in a way that's upstream or connected with the acoustical waves that represent our normal cognition.
Wow.
And so maybe they were checking your teeth either because they were worried that you were already receiving downloads or like in touch prior to this experience, or because they thought the implant where they would communicate with you on a go forward basis might be there.
Wow. I've never even thought of it that way. Some people said they were looking at you maybe for radioactive contamination or something like that.
You might be right. I mean,
but
this is my harebrained.
That really does make sense, man. I mean, you got to look at it all. You can't discount anything.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with a technology that don't sit on couches, that can speak full volumes through your cellular work in your body.
Yeah.
They don't need to communicate. I mean, that's something their brain is so far past that.
Yeah.
They have to speak words to you, and their language is probably where we say, and like, there's none of that in that.
Yeah. They have
in those conversations. It's direct.
Root access.
And you never, ever will forget that feeling and that sound.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. It's almost like we have this meme library that was is installed or something. You look at like Descartes' demon, like maybe that's actually more true than not, where the Cartesian 3D time-bound plane is sort of controlled, at least as far as the veneer that we see,
Right.
and the shades of that. We're seeing shadow play of something higher, and that something higher might be able to communicate on a much more direct level, and also be able to shade, or in Plato you have like, it's like, don't trust your senses, right?
Right.
You have to
There's
contemplate virtue, and you can ascend out of the lower world or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
There's much more.
Huh.
And
I was the only one who read any of that.
yeah, and you forget your primordial self, and maybe in experiences like this, you sort of, you get back in touch with it. But maybe some of these beings are, I was at Hal Puthoff's house not too long ago, and on his bookshelf he had this book called Demonic Reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, like, I don't know, I got to read the book, but it feels like the implication is like our low level reality is kind of controlled by some sort of, in Gnostic traditions, you might call it like a demiurge.
Sure.
Where we're not seeing, ultimate reality.
I think in Lou's book, I found the part where he talks about some of his superiors where they had this demonic direction, thinking these things were
it's called the Collins Elite.
Yes, versus where Lou was in his thinking, which I agree with 100%. I've been told that several times. Well, these are just demons. These are just angels and demons. All right. Well, what's your definition of an angel?
That's what. Yeah, exactly.
In my book, I would just look at somebody that says that. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm serious, and I've seen something in my time too, after our mother passed away, and that really an apparition. I'll just say, and it was my mother's apparition, and my brothers both saw it, and that established me. That night I said, and we all talked about it. Our mama was standing in that kitchen in a lightning storm. Her figure was there. Not her face, but her figure was there. And at 2:00 in the morning on a thunderstorm night in Tampa, Florida, a couple of days after she died. And that's the truth. But I totally agree with what you just saying there. Because I think that I always associate it to when you're in your mother's womb and your dad or your mom or one of your aunts bend down, or your future brother or sister leans down and starts talking to you, and you're in your mother's womb, baby hears that. That, to me, directly related to what I kept hearing, do not fear, that I recognized it. And the accent on that voice sounded as if something off of, what was that? Hogwarts or what do you call it? Harry Potter, when that snake is talking to him like that.
Yeah.
That's the way those
basilisk.
That's the way those words rolled. I can't even do it. Do not fear. And elongate it out, not just those words, how short I was. Do not fear. And I still can't do it right. But it gets to every part of you in description. It gets to every part. You just feel it radiate through you.
And before joining Ellsworth Air Force Base, what was kind of your motivation? Why'd you get into this?
Honestly, I should have probably gone in the Navy. My father was a merchant seaman, and he sailed with Texaco, sailed all of his life, seen USOs. He was in a car accident in 1973 and lost his life. And I just turned 17 years old when that happened. So it literally changed the entire configuration of my family. And my thoughts prior to, I wanted to go to the Maritime Institute. I think it was in some part of Connecticut. I could be mistaken. And I wanted to become a captain. I didn't want to be a chief engineer because I saw how dirty my dad would get, or I'd go down to an engine room of a ship that he was on at port and see him climbing up out of a cylinder of an engine. So, the size of these things are massive. And, I always respected that a great deal. But for me, growing up in South Florida and Long Beach and other places, I always had this aspiration for things that flew. So whenever the Cape was launching and that kind of thing, I always went outside either to see them or go with a bunch of friends, go to Cape Canaveral to watch a rocket launch. And originally I didn't want to go. I wouldn't even think about security police. But I'm colorblind. And after I'd passed all the tests to work on rocket engines, because I thought NASA is my goal, right? I was in the hallway at the AFI station in Jacksonville, just a young guy, long hair down here. And this little staff sergeant, she came running up to me. She goes, Mr. Woods, she goes, we got to talk to you for a minute. And I said, well, what is it? I was ready to go. I was going to go back home to Tampa. And she told me, she goes, I need you to talk to somebody. And I said, okay. So I went back with her, went into this office, and there was this gentleman standing there. And I think he was like a tech sergeant, E6, E7, somewhere around there. And he goes, Mr. Woods, he goes, I need you to look at some things. And he opens up this sample book, like you would go pick out carpet, with all these different colors of carpet, but it was wiring. And he said, show me the purple and yellow intertwined wire. And I just looked, and really I couldn't do it. And he let me do that 2 or 3 times. And he goes, that's why you can't wire a rocket engine. So it made perfect sense to me. So, of course, I did score good on my ASVAB test. So she asked me if I'd be interested in some other things. And I said, sure, let's have a look. So they had videotapes back then. And I looked at a couple of them, and then I saw these guys rappelling out of a helicopter, fully clothed, fully armed, and came out on fast ropes. And I said, and they had berets on their head. And I said, that's what I want to do. So that's how I ended up in security police.
Wow.
And loved it.
So you want to be a rocket scientist?
Well, I wanted to do engines, rocket engines. Yes,
that's a tough job.
I used to always launch rockets growing up as a kid.
Did you?
Yeah, they were 98 cents for, the little rocket engines, fuselages were all made out of like paper towel rolls or something.
What do you think sparked your early interest in rockets and space?
I'm sure that what I saw in 1961 at D. Queen Elementary School in Port Arthur, Texas, had something to do with it.
What did you see in 1961?
My mother was taking me to my first grade school, which was D. Queen Elementary, and we were about the 5th or the 7th car back in line, and I'm on the passenger side in the front seat, no seat belt. We didn't do that back then. My sister was in the back seat. Of course, my mother's driving, and she stopped short of the car in front of her. And she says, look, Anthony, look at those flying saucers. When's the last time your mother ever said something like that to you? I mean, I'm just 6 years old, 5.5, 6 years old. And I just couldn't even fathom what she said. And they were right over a church, just maybe 25 to 50 feet in the air. And there were 3 of them. They were beautiful. Prettiest craft I've ever seen in my life. I can picture them in my mind right now. My sister and I talk about it all the time. And the thing that struck me was they were there long enough to where I kind of did a really strange scan looking around at people. Always kind of anything worth memorizing is worth looking around for a moment to take a quick mental picture of it, if that explains that. But we had a playground directly across from the school that the road was blocked off. And all the kids, everybody met out there before class time. Every eye and arm and hand and pointer finger was pointing in the air. And then looking back to the left at the side of the school, we didn't have AC back then. So the windows were always open. There were people, it was like a 4, maybe 5-story building at the time. It's been since rebuilt. But anyway, all these people were pointing out the windows, and the grades went from kindergarten to 12th grade there. So everybody, including teachers, were looking outside. And the strangest part about it, it was directly over this church that sat right on the corner of D. Queen Boulevard. And the school's here and the church was there. So they were just right here. And we were right there next to it. And my mom, she opens her door and steps out. And my sister, I remember her saying, Mom, I'm scared. She says, it'll be okay, honey. They're not here to hurt you. That's what she said. And I grabbed her by the other hand. We were hanging there watching them, and probably watched them for a good couple of minutes. And they were white, silver craft, standard saucer configuration with a dome on top and a dome on the bottom. But they had these lights that went around the outer rim of it, and they were all synchronized. And it was extremely fast. It was so much to take in as something you've never seen or couldn't even know existed. but it felt so normal. It looked so normal, like somebody was checking in on us, if that's the word. And when they left, it was all at one time, straight up. If there would have been clouds, they'd have punched holes through those clouds. And they were just gone. It just literally just went from that big around to this big around and out of your sight. And the strangest part about that, everybody on that playground and in school, nobody said a word about it. Everybody went right back to what they were doing and never mentioned it all day long.
Have you talked to any of the witnesses since? And said,
No,
hey,
other than my sister. My mother has since passed long ago, but Port Arthur, Texas was a long time, a long time ago. But I've never forgotten that. So it's really something.
That's remarkable. Did you feel changed after that at all, or?
In some way, my sister and I talked about it. I just think the visualization of it and what it could possibly mean to a 6-year-old definitely has, changing effects on what you've known forever, not questioning God, because I believe in God and my Savior, but it just changes you. It opens your eyes or your mind into what is or could be.
And that might have gotten you interested in space and rocketry,
possibly,
and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Interesting.
I don't think they come without a reason. I if I can just say that, I think they have great effects, and there seems to be this thing with the number 3. What it could mean, I don't know. I know Tesla had a real strange thing concerning the number 3, and I've read a lot about him.
Well, it's a sort of Jesus died at 33. Alexander the Great died at 33.
See?
In Freemasonry, you have 33 levels.
Why do you think that happened? It's such a like a life-changing event that seems pretty bizarre that people won't, especially in 61 when you haven't seen that many things in the sky.
No, ever, other than aircraft with propellers. There were no jets, at the time. I flew on a bunch of them, so even at a young age. But yeah, that's very true. I always wonder if just being in the proximity of these things, if they're pulsing or emanating some type of a not energy, but a wave or something that might be inducing to humankind. Maybe in the thought of them or some kind of idea. I don't ever, very few people that I've spoken with or have called me have ever run from a craft, or if they've seen one up close and personal. But it just amazes me that it just seems to be the normal thing when a person does see it, and then they later recollect and, it's something different now,
How come your mom was so nonchalant about it? Like, that feels so shocking, especially when you have your two young kids with you.
She had seen things before, she said, and she really didn't elaborate on any of it, but she said she had seen things before in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, growing up as a kid. And of course, my father was from Banaca, Honduras, and he's seen so many things I can't even in the jungles and in the ocean. And he used to always tell me of an entire crew of 29 or 30 men seeing something exit from the water and come up into the atmosphere and bolt off, And I just let it go. I never really thought too much about it at all. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the Marine Sulphur Queen. It was a ship that sank in 1963. Well, she left port in Port Arthur, Texas. That was the first ship I ever went on as a child. At 5 years old, my father served on that vessel. Only had 2 cousins on board. And he had a job with Texaco at that particular time. And so I went with him he was getting his things. And going up that gangway, I lost, they didn't net the gangways back then. And I lost one of my shoes. And I was so fearful I had my dad by the hand. It probably broke his fingers, but I was so fearful of falling through the steps and into the water, because it was at nighttime. And then she sailed and she was gone just a couple of days later, and they never found anything but one nameplate on her. It said Marine SULF on Miami Beach. And don't know whatever happened to that vessel, and all hands were lost. So 2 of his cousins went down on that ship.
Since I did the documentary last year and wrote my book, I've been amazed by the number of people who've told me that the phenomenon of sighting these objects and having these weird experiences, that I suppose you could call them paranormal, it runs in the family.
Yeah.
Mum had it, dad had it, granddad had it.
Yeah.
It's quite common, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and so I wouldn't turn it into a movie script of some sort of magical ability. It's just, if it's a feature of intelligence, then no surprise that it gets passed down family to family.
Mario, you have an amazing story, man, and I'm super grateful for you.
And I try to bring every single part of it out every single time. And I just want to be as factual as I know how to be, whether it be the incident itself, hypnosis, what I saw, what I drew, what I feel, and I don't try to embellish any part of this, any part whatsoever. I never will do that. I just need Michael Johnson.
Yeah.
Need Michael Johnson.
Yeah, anybody out there, we gotta find this guy.
I've every single, and there's quite a few now, podcasts, and every single network I've ever been on, I've always asked if anyone knows Michael Johnson. I don't know his middle initial. He told me he was from Chicago, Illinois. I've been on all, on every social media that I could, and also TWS, which is Together We Serve, military stuff, trying to find people from that time. And a couple that I have found that I've known, I can't get an answer out of them.
Yeah.
And I can see their picture and their rank and how long they stayed in the service. It gives you those dates, but I can't make communication or contact with them.
Have you made any money off of, your telling your account of what had happened to you?
No, I don't have a book. I would like to try to do an audio book. And someone close to me suggested that.
Yeah.
I've never done that.
Have you faced any pushback from the colleagues or the press or people, or mostly people just grateful that you've told your account?
I've had a couple of people say something before, like, this guy's smoking something. I wish I was. I wish that's all it would have been. But either, as Robert Hastings once said, he goes, Mario, either you were in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the right time. But you were there no matter what.
Yeah.
And he coined it for me, and I have the greatest respect for that man ever.
Yeah, well, it's super clear just speaking to you how matter of fact you are, and how just descriptive the account is. I mean, I feel like I have decent pattern matching when it comes to people bullshitting me. For a job, I invest in companies and stuff. So it's like kind of the ultimate, like, the only thing, you can't be an expert in everything, and you kind of just have to be sussing out people.
Sure.
And so you passed my test, man, and I'm sure you did to the entire audience out.
Thank you.
Mario, really appreciate it, man. This
Yeah.
was amazing, and thanks for your time and for your service, and for going public.
Ambassador. I've heard that word before.
Ambassador, ET ambassador.
I've heard that before. I don't know if it's true.